All right, so we have some fun stuff for you today. So I'm Shishir Mehrotra. I'm one of the founders of Coda. And one of my favorite parts about making trips to New York is getting a chance to meet our community. So thanks everyone for coming. Hopefully we'll have a few good thought-starting conversations here, and then plenty of time to meet people, ask questions. You can ask all your toughest questions. All the right people are here. We've got people here from our marketing team, our product team, our engineering team, sales team. So any questions you have. I think a couple demo stations set up as well. I think Noah's back there. So if you just want to see something, they can do that. But I wanted to talk today about a topic that I'm sure nobody's thinking about called AI. I'll give you a little bit of a tour in a second, but maybe just as a little bit of background on me. Before starting Coda, I used to work at Google for a number of years, used to run the YouTube group there, and we did a lot with AI there. I thought that was pretty exciting. And so when the AI wave started, my initial reaction was, yeah, I've kind of done that, doesn't seem that interesting. And then in November, somebody built a pack for AI with Coda using OpenAI. And to be honest, the pack was kind of hard to use. You had to go find these special tokens, you had to pay for it yourself. And it just took off. It became our #1 used pack very fast. And we started seeing all the different use cases coming out of it. And it spurred us to invest in it as a built-in feature in Coda. So we've been working on it. That team got spun up in January, I think. They got their first release out in April. They got the much more public release out about a month ago, and there's a lot more coming. So they have some really cool stuff they're working on that I'm happy to talk more about as well. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to give a little tour of what we're working on with Coda AI, and much more interestingly, we're going to have one of our top users, Ariana, walk you through how she's been using it in a real world context. And then we'll have some time for Q&A and then more drinks. All right, so let me get started with Coda AI. All right, so first off, when we started thinking about AI, I think the sort of easy litmus test of should we do anything in AI was looking at all the other writing tools out there, blinking cursors out there. I think that every blinking cursor on the planet is going to think of AI at least at some level. It's kind of like, I like to call it the new spell check. It'd be really weird to have a text box these days that didn't give you red squigglies. And I would expect that everywhere where you write, it's going to try to finish your sentences for you. It's going to make everything seem funnier or shorter or longer or better or whatever it might be. But our aspiration, and we knew we had to do that. So at least at minimum, we need to make sure that Coda functioned as a good writing assistant. But what we really thought about with Coda is, how do we go beyond writing assistant to what we like to call the work assistant? What people are actually doing in Coda isn't just writing. They're managing their work, they're managing their meetings, their decisions. They've got lots of different questions that they're trying to answer, or things they're trying to move forward. Was this decision made? Who should this task be assigned to? How do I get this email out to the right person? And so our philosophy on this is that writing assistants make content, work assistants make progress. And that's sort of been our theme for what we're working on with AI. So Coda AI is your new work assistant. We'll talk a little bit more about what that means with some examples. The heart of making that happen is you want an assistant that actually knows something about your work. And in Coda, because everything's pretty interconnected, it's an easy promise to make. The way it surfaces in basically every prompt is you can use the @ symbol to reference any data that you want as part of your prompt. So there's lots of great examples of these. I mean, this one is, write a product design doc based on project notes and customer feedback. A few other great examples here. This one on the top is, I've got a list of list of tasks. Just tag each one, classify them. This one is one that we see used all the time, is take a bunch of notes and summarize them. This is one where I want to do something a little more complicated, based on the responsibilities outlined in team, summarize the items discussed in a team meeting. So this is starting to understand more about how you're organized, bringing it all together into one summary for your team. these are some of the different examples we've seen people doing with Coda: sales teams scoring leads, logging notes, sending follow-up emails, or maybe it's a product team creating PRDs, tagging Jira tasks, so on. Everybody's a little bit different, but we're seeing this incredibly wide variety of what people do with Coda. In some ways, I think that the AI products have built developer interfaces, and then some companies have built end user interfaces. What we're seeing with Coda, as you might expect, is makers making, doing things that we might not expect out of AI. So just a quick tour for those of you that haven't had a chance to play with Coda AI of the core feature set. AI shows up right now in 3 entry points. There's a few more coming very soon, but these are the 3 that we've released so far. So the first one we call the AI assistant. You get to it by hitting / anywhere in your doc. It has a few built-in prompts there. Write something. Make a table is kind of a fun one. That's always one of my fun demos. Make a table of my favorite movies. Make a table of the top companies in the sector, so on. This is I think right now the most commonly used feature is AI columns. You can take any column in Coda and hand it a prompt, and you can refer to anything else, not only in that table, but in the whole document, and it just fills up the column. And so this is a very common use case, is go create me an email for each person or each company, but there's many cases like that. And then the third one, the newest one, is called AI block. And so this is something where, this is a very common use case, is I have a page, I put it at the top, summarize this page, and now as you update the page, the summary is going to change. We do many things like this. Like a very common one for us is we do a process we call Dory Pulse. That's how we get feedback in meetings. So I'll often write one that says, just summarize the questions for this meeting, or summarize the sentiment for this review. So those are 3 of the most common, those are 3 of the entry points today. A few more coming soon. If you can bribe one of the engineers, maybe they'll show you. But those are the building blocks. Really excited about an AI assistant. Writing assistants make content, work assistants make progress. I think we're making good progress on that. And with that, I'd like to introduce Ariana Cofone.
Beautiful. Nice.
Okay, I had to work on that. Yeah. I was told there's an Italian way to do it, but
there's like a hand Cofone.
yeah, so I couldn't do that properly. I'll let you do that. And she's going to tell you more about what she's been up to. She's a fractional COO, which I've learned a lot about today, which is really cool. And that, I think, gets to bring Coda to many different clients, many different ways. And so we'll get to learn more about that.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay,
let's
you
pass over the
this.
mini microphone. What's up? Hi, everybody. Wow, this is a beautiful, packed house. Love it. Give me 1 second while I bring this up here.
Oh, I love that. Is that AI?
It is AI. In the spirit of AI, this is me and AI. What's up? So I'm Ariana. I am an operations nerd. So I'm going to start. Are there any other operations nerds in the audience? We got one. I guess that's like a maybe. Maybe one back there. Okay. So how am I an operations nerd? For over 10 years, I've worked in operations as a chief operating officer, a VP of operations, a creative technologist, and I just love to work within operations. There's lots to do and lots of problems to solve. So most recently I'm keeping busy, as we talked about, as a fractional chief operating officer, working with global clients on building their operations with and without Coda. I also am the host of the Secret Ops podcast that uncovers the world of operations. If you want to nerd out with me, check that out. And then I'm also part of the Coda Expert program. So what we do is we take businesses that want to learn about Coda and bring it into their business, and then I make it happen with my Coda skills. So when I came in today, they asked, yo, can you talk about Coda AI and operations? And I said, totally, with the caveat that I've got to talk about technology adoption. Because I think this is the problem that we got with AI, is that we know all the cool things, but we actually don't know how this fits into our world. And I felt this pretty intensely. So back in 2018, I was a creative technologist. And part of that role is I would learn all of the emerging technology, and then I would create content and fly around the world and teach businesses what the heck that emerging technology was, and then what it was doing within their industry. So for example, blockchain, taught that everywhere, cybersecurity, APIs, software as a service, and then of course artificial intelligence, machine learning models. That was like my jam. And I was surrounded by data scientists, technologists, but I did not want to adopt the technology. I did not want to get into AI. I did not want to see it. And 2018 passed, 19, 2020, 21, 22, and then I didn't have a choice. We all didn't have a choice. I had to sort of start using it and playing with it and figuring out what the heck I'm gonna do and bring this into my work and how is this gonna happen. So I was wondering, what is that emotional block? And Stephen King, I think, put it pretty well. He said, resistance to change is proportional to how much the future might be altered by any given act. We know AI is changing everything. It's scary, it's awesome, it's exciting, it's daunting, it's all of those feelings. And so the resistance that I felt, as I'm sure most of us feel, is totally normal. So how did I get around that? How did I start learning it? And that is when Luigi came in. So this is Luigi. He's our 3-year-old golden doodle, apple of our eye. And anything will get you to be creative, like your doggy. And I found out that AI images could be made where you could take your dog and then do some cool imagery around it. So that's exactly what I did after resisting. Beret Luigi, look at that. Outer space Luigi, King Luigi, yes! I did this for myself, then my parents wanted some too. So it became this crazy thing that eventually I was like, let me check out ChatGPT, let me check out OpenAI. And I will credit my husband, Joey, back there in getting me into this world. And I had that moment once I started using it, and I was like, oh my God, I can write an article in 30 seconds, this is sick. That I went into this over sense of confidence. If any of you know the Dunning-Kruger effect. So you've got confidence and then competence. And I was at peak of Mount Stupid. I was like, yes, this is awesome. And then quickly I went to the valley of despair because my brain was sort of let's automate all the things, let's do it. And then when you actually tried to do it, you sort of were where do I even begin this process? And maybe if you feel that same way, raise your hand. I know we've got engineers, but if you feel that way, I can see some head vibes, right? You're wow. So today, my goal is to show you some examples and to get you into a new point on this hill called the Hill of Clarity. I coined this, copyrighted. A slope of enlightenment, enlightenment ain't gonna happen in 10 minutes, but clarity might happen. So to do that, I'm gonna walk you through some case studies of how I've been using Coda AI within my clients and as an operator. So let's talk about operations. Operations, simplest way I've been able to describe it, it's the fusion of people, process, technology fueled by data. And if you're those are just words that you're putting together and they make no sense, it's the super glue between your functions or the connective tissue between your teams. My favorite is, I think it's the peanut butter to strategy's jelly. It makes it sticky and brings the whole sandwich together. So what does it look like within AI? How do we use this thing? As we've seen, common use cases, generating content. Yes, we've all done that. Summarizing meetings, love that. Definitely saved me a ton of time. And imagery creation. We all saw my practice there. The ideas that I'm going to show you, what about data cleaning? Could you use Coda AI to clean some data, save yourself some time? What about doing industry research and saving yourself that divergent amount of time to research different industries? And what about communicating with your global teams? So, like we talked about, basic things. AI assistant, column, block. Assistant, big, broad strokes. It's like a wizard. You sort of I want this thing, and then it just does it. The AI column, you're in table land. This is great for formulas. And then AI block is great to store information and then reference it in other places. So 3 case studies today. First one is the ops case study of dirty data. Who deals with dirty data on a daily basis? On a dirty basis? If you don't raise your hand, you're just lying. No, I'm just kidding. I feel like all of us, we have data around us. Most of it's dirty. We spend too much of our time cleaning data. And I found that with a client. I had an amazing client who was a very popular human being, hundreds and hundreds of clients. And in moving her to Coda, we had an issue with dirty data. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to spend hours doing this. So we wanted to focus on 3 things with experimenting with Coda AI. One, could we just get the names to be in the same format? Simply, can we do that? Then could we take global phone numbers and make them a consistent format? And then could I hyperlink it so that when you press a button, it calls them? So this was the approach I was trying to figure out and dipping my toe into Coda. And I figured data cleaning was the best way to do it. And so here's what I'm gonna share with y'all after this. I did do an AI execution that talks you through like how I approach this with some of the search words that I had so that you can use it. But really it's about experimentation. And I'm actually gonna demo it so that you get a really clear idea of what this is. Boop. Okay, so first and foremost, you put your dirty data into a table. Yuck, gross, it's in there, done. And then what you're gonna do is, the first thing is I'm gonna clean the names. So who has used the Coda AI column yet? We've got a handful. Okay, cool, awesome. So I'm gonna make this really simple. We're gonna just copy and paste because it's a Monday and nobody's got time to remember these things. And then what you do is you go into the column, and I wanna reference the names raw column. I click in here, and then you see the AI. And then you prompt it. So I'm just gonna copy and paste, and then I'm gonna type this up at names raw to be first and last name in a consistent format. So if you're wondering, how did I get to this little like cheat code that I entered? It literally just trial and error, but it was really super easy. And on the bottom here, you'll start to see a preview. So this is great. If you've got a ton of data and you want to see if it's working before you hit enter and it takes all that time, you can see the preview. And then you hit fill, and we see AI do its magic. So the interesting part is like, cool, it hit most of it. Look at that, it's a weird one. But you can start to see, all right, this could save me a ton of time. Now it's not perfect. I would need to re-enter a prompt and try something else, but like we're getting there. Next, could I do the phone? So with the phone, I knew that if I wanted to press a telephone to call on your computer, you had to do tel and the plus at the front of it. So I was like, all right, could I prompt Coda AI to take the number and then tack this on the front so I could then hyperlink it? Follow me here. So I'm gonna copy this. We're gonna go again into Coda AI column. I'm actually gonna do, there we go. And then we're gonna do phone number raw, and we're gonna see how it does. Great. So I get a preview again, just checking it before I update all my data. And it does like a actually pretty awesome job. So like all of the numbers, again, global phone numbers, if you've ever dealt with it, like it takes forever to format, and it's just done it. And then what I can do is I have this button here that I set up for her so that when you press the button, it calls the link, and I'm gonna demo this where it just like opens it up and it's like, hey, call this person. It's not a real number, so we're not gonna call somebody today. But this is where we can really use Coda to save us some time. It is the most boring, unsexy use case. It is the most important use case in my mind for Coda AI columns especially. All right, so that was case study number one, dirty data. Metrics libraries. Who deals with metrics on a daily basis? Like, oh man, I saw hands like, yeah. Metrics are a necessary evil, but they're also awesome because they help us track our progress and our goals. So I had a client, and most of my clients, I develop goals with them because I'm an operations person and that's what we do. My favorite framework is objectives and key results. Objectives, what do you want to achieve? Key results, how do we measure our progress? And then the metrics help to track and quantify our progress. So with this one client, it was super sick. We like got the OKRs, no big deal, but the metrics, he didn't even know the possibilities of the metrics that you could track. So I thought, could I use Coda AI to generate like a metrics library to show him what this could be, to show him the possibilities? So that's exactly what I did. So we're gonna use the Coda AI assistant, which again is like a catch-all. Let's just see what they can do. So we're gonna create a table with the top 20 metrics for a leadership team. So again, you could say for a sales team, for a marketing team, and then it'll specify that. In this case, I just want it for a leadership team just to do this demo. So we're gonna write a blog post, but not that. We're gonna say, create a table with the top 20 metrics for a leadership team. Oh, there we go. It's working its little magic. There we go. So what it gave us was a metric and a description. Did it give us 20?
Still working on it.
Yeah, it's thinking really hard. But it gave me like some things to just like articulate. What would I have done otherwise? Google, copy, paste, put it into a table for my client, right? So this just immediately gives me a shorthand that I can use. Then I was like, let's test AI. What if I wanted to categorize it? So like, what if this library is so big that there's like 100 metrics, and then you want metrics for financial teams and marketing teams, like could it categorize it? So I was like, let's try it out, Coda column. So we go into Coda column land. Again, I go into AI. I paste this in there. I reference the metric column, so it's got that input to reference. And then what you can do is you can say, I want the length. So I want one word, usually a team, right? I want the type to only be, let's just see, text. And then I want the tone to be neutral. Let's just see what we get out of it. Okay, so this is pretty dang good. So like in general, this took me 30 seconds. Again, this would take you a lot longer for the quantity, but I wanted to test it even more. Could we quantify the effectiveness of the metric? So I was like, yo, AI, could you rank the metric effectiveness by industry standards? Let's see what it does. All right, we're gonna go AI column. Let's do a number. All right, we're gonna metric, let's see, at metric. And let's see if it gives us a number here. Oh, thank you. Let's give it a slider. Let's try this again. So again, you can change it, you can fill it again. So you'll see it gives it a preview. Okay, so now we've got like an effectiveness rating. And if you look at the effectiveness, like, wow, cost of goods sold, not quite effective to AI. So my question was like, okay, AI, how are you making these ratings? Like, tell me the logic, right? Like, why is this high? Why is this low? So what did I do? I asked it. I said, give the reasoning behind the metric. I want to know what's going on here. So again, we go back in, we go back to AI, we drop that in with the metric, and we see what it says. So you kind of get what I'm going for here, right? It's really about like, column 4?
Where it says at rating, it needs to be column 4.
Oh, thank you. See, paired programming, I see you. Okay, so let's do at rating, thank you.
You didn't name it.
Oh, sorry, at column 4, thank you. And then we're gonna fill it up. So this is where, again, you're compounding different pieces of data and you're trying to get information, and then we're gonna just like keep it and see what it does. So this is interesting, right? Like this gives us some ideas of how we could do research very quickly, and then we as humans can go back in and clean it up and make it pretty and yummy and nice and applicable, right? But this is just a really easy way to give people the options. And as an operator, I have to give a lot of options. So this saves me a lot of time in the day. All right, last case study before we wrap up with some key takeaways, which is global stakeholders. Who works with the global team? Okay, cool. Who works with a team whose first language is not English? Yeah. Okay, cool. So that is a challenge. And I also know that it's a burden if you don't, what are some key takeaways? If you just like, if this washed all over your head and you're like, Ariana, what are you doing to me? It's a Monday, like, come on, man. Here's what you want to take away. First of all, operations is everywhere, and it's super duper cool. If you aren't an operator, talk to me. If people, process, technology, or data is involved, operations is somewhere in the fold because we get our noses into everything to figure it out. The next thing is, I really think that Coda AI especially, it's really all about the data. Like I said, it's not a really sexy application of Coda AI, but man, could it save you a ton of time to be able to clean that data or verify that it's clean when you're trying to get insights. The next thing is you gotta learn the rules to break the rules. We all are in this new area, right? I got a pity laugh there. You have to know the rules in order to break them. And I think we are at this point that Coda AI and Coda in general could be whatever we want it to be. So you really have to learn these 3 things. Test out the AI assistant, the column, the AI block. If you have a problem, try to solve it with one of these and you'll learn what to do and how to use it. 2 more things. That compound effect. When you combine things together, a table and a column and a variable that's dynamic, this is when we start to get cool stuff. So the more that you tie things together, the more that you can really see it taking a true effect. And like I said, creativity is key because you have to be innovative within the space right now. It requires you to be creative. And just because I'm an operator, I am super duper creative, even though I'm a total technology process nerd, you know? I'm also a creative person. And you have to think out, have to think of Coda as your canvas and AI as your paintbrush, and then just think what you can build, and then just try it. Cool. If you dig what I'm talking about, get in touch. ArianaCofone.com. Secret Ops is the podcast. Also, just talk to me after. I would love to nerd out with you. And thank you so much. Yay!
I think we have 2.
Great.
Yeah.
Fancy.
How about one more hand for Ariana? That was amazing. I think
real.
You're definitely hired. All right, I think we have some time for some Q&A. So any questions are totally fair game. You can direct them at one of us, and if it's too hard, it goes to her.
Oh man.
Go ahead.
So I actually had a conversation with support.
Oh, actually, introduce yourself so everybody get to know each other. Yeah.
Karina Mickley. I'm also a fractional COO
Yeah.
and a workflow consultant. So I actually did a cool thing where I used Coda AI to kind of like hack a Slack channel of the community so that I taught it our onboarding doc, but I'm not able to reference a page. So I had to create a column and teach it. So it would be lovely if we could like reference a page within the doc and tell it to use the content in that page as opposed to just a block.
Can someone verify? I think we fixed this.
Did you?
Yeah.
You can reference pages.
I think you can.
Yay!
Yeah.
If it's
Oh my
not working,
God.
let us know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Let us know. You should be able to reference a page.
Awesome.
It's a very common use case.
Yeah.
That's an easy one. All right.
Whew.
Who's next? Right here.
Rafi Bernstein from Qualtrics. I'm curious what kind of sourcing you guys use for AI. Like I know that OpenAI might stop in like 2020, and so some of the information that it pulls isn't completely up to date. So what do you guys use for that? And then also with the translation, is it just a Google Translate? Is it an in-house built translation engine?
So the AI backend, we're playing with lots of them. So most of what you saw there is GPT 3.5a. Or sorry. Yeah, Turbo. Sorry, Turbo. And there's a bunch of other ones coming. There's actually a big debate on whether or not we should give customers choice in that. So if you have feedback on that, we'd love to know. Some people want to bring their own model. Some people have a relationship already. We've played around with, and we have experiments with a whole bunch of others, Anthropic, the GPT-4 APIs. There's a bunch of ones that are newer ones that are being built as well. But most of queries right now are being routed to, like the vast majority, are routed to GPT 3.5 Turbo. The translation is theirs, so it's not Google Translate. There's a separate pack for Google Translate if you want to use that. That was a really cool example of this one, though. It's pretty amazing that a system that actually hasn't been taught translation specifically can still do a pretty good job with translation. I think that's really impressive.
Yeah.
But no, it's not currently doing that. There are a handful of cases where we fork, where we'll take what you've asked and we'll split the query and send it somewhere else. Actually, one you gave, you didn't have picking select list, but I think if you had done that, it would have forked.
Got it.
But there's a few cases where we think we can route to a system that can handle a query better. Sometimes because it's faster, or sometimes we think it's better, or sometimes we think it's cheaper. There's lots of different considerations there. But right now, most of it's routing to the same place.
Does Coda take any security measures with the AI source? Sorry, Coda, you can ask.
Go ahead, you can ask.
Well, I also work for Qualtrics. I'm Courtney Jones.
Yeah.
So yeah, I work with Rafi.
Yeah.
But a big piece around AI is security measures.
Yeah.
So within Qualtrics, we have our own AI that, we're not really allowed to use open AI because we can't send customer sensitive information or even company sensitive information. Obviously, a lot of that is in Coda. We use it for a lot of our program plans and stuff. So
Yeah.
curious as to how you guys manage security.
So first off, there is a setting for making sure OpenAI can't record or train on your data, and that's default turned on. So you don't actually have to worry about that. But I know there are some security teams that want to be even more cautious than that. And so we've been working on a model for doing what we think of as self-hosted AI backends. Interestingly, our surface to the AI backends is pretty simple, so we can pretty easily swap them out. And so I think as maybe taking a step way back, every backend we're talking about has been around for like 4 months, and so I think there's a lot still being figured out about what companies want to do there. But I suspect there'll be some companies, maybe Qualtrics is one of them, that says I want to use our AI backend with the Coda front end, and I got no problem with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
My name is Coda, and I wanted to know, how long will this remain free?
How long will it remain free was the question. We're working on pricing now, and if people have opinions on it, there's actually a bunch of research being done on it. One of the reasons we launched it free was just to see what the use cases are like and try to get a good sense of the variety. I'll tell you, there's an incredibly long tail. I mean, there's some users racking up insane bills, and we're going to have to find the right way to charge them for it. And there's many others for whom it's not as frequent or as heavy a use, but it's often very important, and so we're trying to find the right pricing model for it. Current plan is to announce pricing model. I've given the team about 2 months to sort of figure out how people are using it. So there'll be plenty of notice. We'll give people a clear way to think about it. And my view of it, just to be clear, is I think AI, one of the things I love about AI, and your examples were fantastic for this, is most of the interesting use cases, it's not the AI that's the interesting part, it's the AI that's like the little bit of sugar that makes something else really interesting. And so from my perspective, I just want to make the Coda use cases more interesting. So I don't really want the team to make tons of money on AI, just want to make sure that Coda is well set up for them. But a couple months, we should have better answers for you. In the meantime, if you have thoughts on not only what the price should be like, we're talking a lot about like the units, like how do you make it understandable to people? Because the units that the backends use are completely incomprehensible to most users. They price in tokens, which makes no sense to anybody. And the complexity of what you hand an AI backend is dependent on all these different factors that I don't think most people can understand. So we'd love feedback on that. We'd love feedback on how you would manage it. So if you got sort of an allocation, like would you manage it per doc or per user, or how would you deal with I ran out? What should happen? Somebody runs out. So lots of really hard questions that we're working through now. But next couple months, I'll go over here. Yeah.
As an ex-programmer, I find I try too hard when working with Coda, especially Coda AI. It's just like watching what you've done. I've learned a few things. Are you working on a cookbook that says do it this nice, simple way, rather than 50 lines of macro, because that's how you used to do it, and 5 lines of program? The surprise is 4 lines of AI. And I've used AI to fix, easily do a Coda formula that was 4 or 5 lines long. And I didn't know I could do that because I was trying so hard to say, well, if it equals this, do that. And in reality, I didn't need to do that because Coda itself plus the AI was so powerful.
I think you have some examples like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a whole mindset shift. We were talking about it earlier. Like, how do you deal with adoption? Because you've got different levels of technical skill sets, right? You've got people who are programmers who are trying to figure out how to use Coda. You've got people who pretty much only use like Google Docs. So like, where's that middle ground? I would say the sweet spot is just for more technical people, always just like put a post-it note, like try AI, because I always forget. I know that sounds silly, but sometimes you need that trigger to like try this. For people who aren't technical, I would say really it's just about, with AI, take something that you have existing somewhere else and then bring it into Coda and see what happens. Use AI, try that out. We could go and totally nerd out about this. We could talk about the data component and all that, but I think really it's about remembering for it.
Your cleaning data example, because I deal with lawyers and legal documents, was very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially because they don't want to know, they don't care, they just want it to work like tomorrow morning.
Yes. Yeah, and it's so, you've got very tight timelines, and as somebody who has to put all these things together, exactly. These are huge things that I think will help us majorly. Also, it gets people to use their skill set for what it's good for, which is all of those strategic pieces and putting all this together. We don't need to be for hours cleaning data. It's not going to help us out.
I also think people get so excited about AI, they forget that Coda itself is very powerful.
Yeah.
Like you can change what kind of column something is, and it doesn't. It does a week of programming to go change every program.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just astonishing.
I mean, on the start of your question, so the example you gave with the first Monday in the week is a really interesting one.
Yeah.
There was someone here that said they claim they're the best Coda expert in the room. So we're going to call them out in a bit and make sure that they are up for the challenge. But that's obviously a formula you can write in Coda without needing AI. You used AI to do it. I think we're going to see a lot of that. And there's a lot of cases where the AI is being used as a way to instruct Coda. The next entry point coming, which I think will be number 4 on your list, will be a little bit more geared this way. You'll see it soon. But I think that the way I've been thinking about it is AI for Coda is writing assistant, work assistant, which is most of what you're seeing now, and then solution assistant comes next. And in that world, what I think a lot of what people will use AI for in Coda is build me something. and sometimes very wide open prompts. You know, something in our sort of teaser video was like, build me a version of Jira with $100 voting. It's that's a kind of like a canonical one that the team thinks about. But you know, things like write me a formula that does this. That it's a much harder challenge, and so we're still working through all the parts of it, and decided to get this part out first while we work on that. And the first thing you'll probably see for like formulas, for example, is going the other direction. So it'll be, tell me what this is doing. So they actually have a little prototype of that working. You open the formula builder and it just says, tell me what this is doing. Actually, a really cool way of doing it is like insert comments into the formula with what each line is doing. And then we're using that to train the other direction. It's like, oh, if we got that right, now tell me what you want to do, and maybe we can produce something that does it. So all that's still coming, but you know, you can get a little arc of where we're headed with it.
But that would get you around the cookbook you need to write how everything works.
Yeah. I'm gonna go all the way in the back.
Yeah, I'm curious. I think from an adoption perspective.
Introduce yourself,
Oh, hi.
and a little louder. Yeah.
I'm Zay. I work at Times. I think oftentimes from like an adoption perspective, there's a challenge and a conceptual mind shift around starting to use relational databases versus non-relational databases. A lot of that has to do with like how your information and your schema is designed. What are your thoughts around helping people through schema design and then also through change of the schema, which I think is actually the most irritating part when you realize you need to put everything together.
I'll give my answer in a minute, but I feel like you've probably done this with a lot of people.
So much time.
Yeah.
So for me, it all starts with the data. I remember when I was in code school, I was like, I want my application to look like this. And my mentor was like, but what about the data? Like, what's the data structure? So for Coda, I think it starts with the data. What are you bringing in? What does that look like? Is it a dropdown? Is it a text field? Could we rethink that? What did the dropdown field say? That process, I think, is the first time that a lot of people have to actually think about that if they aren't technologists. So you sort of have to usher them into Coda through that lens. And it's the planning phase, right? So that's kind of where I started. Is like, let's define every data point that we need and how we're going to define it. Then when you start to thread it through, I have run into what you said so many times where you build it a certain way and then it just doesn't work. I mean, I'd like to say that there's like a magical solution to making it fix. There's not, but I do think that when you're writing something once and referencing it in different places, it makes fixing it better. So that's kind of my rule. If I can write something once and reference it in other places, then if I have to fix it, I only have to fix it once. That's my rule.
I'll give a slightly philosophical answer to your question. So I think, and you know, I've spent a lot of time working on databases, and so I have lots of opinions on the topic. I actually think the word is really scary. And you said relational databases. I think that frame is really scary. If you tell people we're going to make lists of things, it doesn't seem as scary. And that's all they are, the list of things. Yeah. And so I think a lot of this is products like Coda, I think, are giving a better interface for thinking about these things. That if we sort of start early enough with simple enough examples, then people will learn the right patterns. Maybe to use a different analogy, I think that the way a spreadsheet works, we all like kind of take for granted now, but at some point, everyone here was taught what $B, $3 means. And that's like so crazy that we were taught that. Because that makes no sense. Like it's like but it, like at some point, like I have two younger kids. They learn it in school now. I mean, in probably second grade, they're taught, here's what these things mean, and they have to build a spreadsheet to do it, and so on. So I think some of this is, like, is that easier? I don't think it's easier. I think lists of things is actually easier to reason about, and relationships between lists of things are easy to reason about, but it'll just take some time to get there. I think it's really important to pick really simple examples to start with. I think things like tasks and projects are a really good way to understand things, because they're like very naturally lists of things. Contacts are as well, but you have a follow-up question. Yeah.
I think the thing that I'm most interested in is actually like using AI as a tool for that.
Oh, to schematize things?
To be able to help people think through what the right schema is and to get to the level where people can say, this is what I want to be able to do with my database. I don't necessarily know the language to specify what type of relations those are or what kind of columns I should have. Can you tell me?
Yeah, I think that is where we're headed. So this like idea of a solution assistant, right? I think we've certainly gotten to the place where like we have some prototypes where it's writing formulas and so on for us. Designing data structures, I think, is one of, like, if it's really simple, like she showed an example of design a table, which is not that complicated. And if you're sort of specific enough, it can do better. But if I pick something like I want an OKR tracker that has a hierarchical model between objectives and key results, I don't think it does a good enough job yet, so we haven't shipped any of those things. But it is certainly part of the goal to be able to do that. So, how about over here?
Hey, Adam. I've just got a follow-up question on sourcing. So, how likely is it that you're going to let users choose the AI model? And I'm thinking of it specifically from if you're in a niche vertical like law.
Yeah.
You probably don't want ChatGPT looking up case law for you because it's historically not got a good record of that.
Yeah,
You might want a model that's built specifically and trained on case law, or it could be on building regulations in a certain state, etc.
I think it's a question of when, not if. So we're architecting such that we'll be able to do that. Maybe to say it more strongly, I think that as a SaaS product, many of you here are from customers from larger companies and so on. For the most part, you don't care much about what backends we run on. We happen to run on AWS. You don't really care that much. But I get asked all the time about what the AI backend is. And I don't think that's just us. I think every product is going to get asked that. And so when we started this project, we started with that premise that people will want to swap out the back end sometime. And we just heard a bunch of reasons. It might be for security reasons. It might be for, I think it's trained on my vertical or my industry better. It might be because I want to pre-train it on my own data. I think there's another one that wasn't mentioned is cost. I think there's some cases where people will deploy their own models and get them trained. They don't want to do it over and over again for every different application. So in my view, that's what not only we'll do, I think every product with an AI backend will be forced to do that. So, yeah.
So
how about I'll go all the way to the back.
Hi, this is Sharvish. On that same point, you mentioned you tried out a couple different models for the backend. I'm curious how you're evaluating the performance or how you ended up on GPT 3.5 Turbo.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have a set of common prompts. I mean, this is actually a really hard problem. Is how do you decide between models and evaluate prompts? It's obviously super subjective. There's a bunch of firms that do it for you that will go and you hand them examples and they'll hand you back a grading and run them. I wouldn't say we've settled on a way of doing it that's particularly scientific yet. And there's some pretty practical limitations that have led us to starting with 3.5 Turbo, mostly capacity, availability, price, so on, and not really quality yet. I suspect over time quality will become a bigger issue. All right, how about all the way in the back there?
So I had a question about using images either to be able to parse images in other places in the document, or to be able to generate them inside tables, even just graphs or simple things like that, which I guess are a form of tables, but then can you make more complex canvases than just table cells?
I mean, you definitely can generate images.
I haven't done it in Coda yet.
Yeah, there is a Dolly pack that's still out there that you can use to do it. And there's a bunch of people that have built other ones. There's also a bunch of packs that generate images not through AI. The Mermaid pack is one of the most popular ones. I didn't actually know what Mermaid was, but apparently it's super popular. And so you can definitely generate images that way. I think we have some ideas and expectations for how to make that more native. So we can do that more directly, but you can definitely do it today.
And regarding more complex canvases from the AI assistant, not just generating a table, but if you want an entire page with some text fields and tables and all of that.
Yeah, I mean you can. So it's actually what the AI knows how to do. If you give it a prompt that asks it to do that, it'll do it. I'm not sure it's doing enough that I would. I mean, you can certainly ask it to generate a page with text tables, or so on. It'll do a pretty good job of it. Right now, OpenAI doesn't return images to us, so you have to do it a different way because it returns it in mark. I guess it returns URLs sometimes, but so more coming that way. But that's certainly the expectation.
What are you thinking your use case would be? I'm just curious.
So one thing is, for example, if we have a page where we ran a survey with some customers, we made a little table with survey forms, and then we collected that data and then we turned that into a graph saying here are the responses of this, and then also some text, sort of like a dashboard saying we got this many responses, this many people wrote this thing, and basically we have report sort of pages like that already for what that is. And if you just want to say, okay, maybe not maybe like that, but based on this other thing you want to.
Oh, it's a great use case.
That's a really good use case.
Yeah.
That would have saved me a lot of time, I think, if
Yeah.
I had that. That's a good idea.
It's a good one to submit for us.
Yeah, seriously, I want to see that.
How about we take 2 more, and then we'll head upstairs. How about here? Okay.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm a product manager. I'm curious if you have a stance on when tech companies like Coda would consider creating and training their own models, or if you think that's too big of a feat for any non-AI centered company.
No, we definitely have some of our own models. I don't think it's a. I think when people say model, there's a very wide spectrum of what model means. What they've been doing with some of the very large models, training for long periods of time with tons of spend, tons of input. Actually, some of the most interesting cases are done that are much more specialized. Data sets are much smaller. You're looking for particular accuracy. You're looking for ability to cite back where it came from. You want to restrict its outputs. Those are actually significantly easier to do and much cheaper. And so there's a bunch of cases like that where we're training our own. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Hello, Dennis Essen, HubSpot, and I'm a Coda novice, so thank you for this. Do you imagine it ever being conversational, like clean up the data, right? Like, can you clean up this data and then ask a bunch of questions and then you do it from there?
You'll have to stay tuned for building block number 4.
I can't wait.
Yeah, that was a pretty good tease.
For you.
That's a pretty good tease for what's coming next. So, yeah, it's a very common request. It's funny how people have, AI came out, and I think the back ends for AI got really much better, and that's why we're seeing a lot of this. But I think actually the biggest change that happened was the UI, and I think ChatGPT just trained everybody that AI can kind of feel like a person. This ability to converse back and forth is something we get asked about all the time, and people are now doing that in Coda, and they prompt something, and they're like, hey, how come I can't go back and ask it something else that follows up to that? And so it's coming. I think we have a pretty good idea for how to do it. All right. I think that was a great set of questions. Thank you, Ariana, for the wonderful
thanks for having me.
presentation. I think Liz is sending us upstairs to the roof. So come join us up there, and there'll be some more drinks and food and so on there. All right.